At 5:18. Are we on, Jim? Okay. So this is a special meeting of the School Building Committee on April 26th at 5:15. And its purpose is to take care of the bills that we couldn't pay at the last meeting where we didn't have a quorum. So for the record, we have Mayor DeSimone, myself, Jason Parento, Laurie Reagan, Jackie Romanicki, Jerry Freecut, Jay Allard, Kate Campbell, Terry DeSisto, and Jeremy Gay, and that makes a quorum. And so you want to call for the approval of the minutes?
Move to approve. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion approved.
Okay. I think Steve can go over the change orders and contingency transfers that we need to
Yep.
handle.
So
Thank you, Terry.
change order number 31, there are three GCRs. GCR 212, RFI 959, drainage at concession and scoreboards. So this was at the existing football stadium outside our limit of work, but the grades that we brought from the new project to existing didn't work out, so we added a couple of catch basins and drainage there, and that was $38,638.12. GCR 222, RFI 973, added thermostat in B10K. So this was transportation and payroll offices. They shared a thermostat, and one room was always cold and the other one was hot, so we added an extra thermostat there. That was $2,534.11. And GCR 223, PR 154 for added electrical data to jewelry and library offices. Owner requests, we converted a storage room to an office, and then the teacher in the jewelry shop requested some additional power for equipment that's used in there. So that was $6,565.03. Grand total, $47,737.26. As always, these have been fully vetted by Consigli, Skanska, and KBA.
Awesome.
And then there's one GCT. I can go over that if you
We
want.
take a vote to approve that?
Yep.
Move to approve. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved.
And the one GCT is GCT 076, which is general requirements and some changes related to the maintenance addition. We had money set aside for this specific case, separate from the rest of the project. It was a separate contingency, and this just reconciled all the costs. So it was $55,804.51, which was less than what we had carried, and the savings resulting from that went or going towards the additional fence that's going around the maintenance addition. So we're just seeking approval for the $55,804.51, which is a transfer from the contingency. So it's not adding money to the GMP.
Motion?
Move to approve. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, then we got to pay the bills here.
Let's pay the bills.
Those bills we all went over with Anjanette at the last meeting that didn't occur. And does anybody have any questions on those bills?
Move to approve. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Then I
That
think we
everything?
ought to move to adjourn at 5:22.
So move. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned at 5:22.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
I call to order the special meeting of the Municipal Building Commission. And for the record, Terry DeSisto, Jackie Romanicki, Jerry Freecott, Jay Allard, and myself are here. The mayor has also joined us. We have a quorum. And we have representatives from KBA, and we have the fire chief here. And we hope the police chief is on his way. But we need to get going, so you have the floor.
Sure. So I'll start. My name is Sean Schmiegel, Associate Principal of Castle Blues Associates, Project Manager on this feasibility study.
I'm Todd Costa from Castle Blues Associates as well. I'm the principal in charge of the Attleboro Public Safety Project, as well as all public safety within the KBA company.
Eric Royce, landscape architect, associate landscape architect, Castle Blues Associates. I've been responsible for looking at the various sites for this project and for this high school.
Okay. Could you just quickly review the deficiency list?
Yep. So just a quick update, we started late last fall. Our group of consultants, mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineers went and visited the existing stations. So we did present, a long story of all the images and whatnot, but I'll be able to give a brief summary of some of the existing conditions over at the fire station at 100 Union Street. Sorry, it's all words, but really just it's beyond its life expectancies of this type of use of a building. The basements are showing signs of deterioration. There's cracking in the foundation, which is showing settling issues. There's moisture issues because of that. There's cracking in the structural CMU walls. Again, the age of the building, there's settling occurring. There's wood floor joists in certain areas, so with that moisture occurring, the ends of the floor joists are starting to deteriorate. Joists, like I just said, are cracking. The efflorescence, which means there's moisture getting within the walls on the masonry. There's cracks all throughout the floor, in areas of the floors. Lintels over the openings are starting to rust, which is, again, a structural deficiency. There's cracking, and then none of the downspouts are connected to any sort of underground drainage, so just pouring out onto the surface, which is, again, creating more of an issue for deterioration. It's not fully sprinklered. It's not fully mechanically ventilated, so there's no real fresh air coming into the building, which doesn't meet current standards. The exhaust system in the apparatus bay is all manual, so it's not, again, it's sufficient to an extent, but it's not meeting today's current standards. Minimal clearance issues, not only around the apparatus, but also around building support systems, so the electrical panels and the boilers and everything, so because they're utilizing those spaces for storage. No emergency lighting, or it's largely missing. No automatic means of interior lighting that's shutting off, so it's just lights are either on or off. So like in this building, there's daylighting and control, so if it's a certain time of the day, the lighting will dim. So it's just, like I said, on or off. Minimal exit signage, and then the fire alarm coverage throughout the building is generally missing. Which due to the age of the building, that's normal.
It's ironic.
Yeah, it's fire station, but it's 24 hours. They know what's going on.
So Sean, my memory is this building goes back to the 1890s?
It's late 90s. Yeah.
And it replaced the building that's now the Council on Aging, right? And so one of the questions that's been asked is this building savable? Is it rehabable? Do we need to put a new building up? Obviously there have been some things done to it over the years. We just actually put a new roof on it.
Yep.
Although we thought that roof was leaking, and we found out it wasn't, because the water's getting in through the walls. And those walls probably need to be repointed and resealed, depending on how long we have to keep that station in operation. But, what's your opinion on the reuse of that building?
Reuse as a fire station, or reuse as just any sort of municipal building?
I think as a fire station, because obviously this is, the reason we're here.
Sure. You want to take that?
Sure. So reuse as a fire station, there's a few challenges with that. One of the things is fire stations, police stations are considered essential facilities. So per modern day code, current code, they have a 2 to 2.5 times structural requirement as a conventional office building or any other type of facility. Being 100 years old, code didn't exist back then. One of the reasons why you're getting cracking, the differential settlement, the thermal expansion, there's no reinforcing in that. So to reinforce that building to meet a current standard is cost prohibitive in the grand scheme of things. You're going to put a significant amount of money just to stiffen the building. Then we go beyond that to operational, as Sean had mentioned, there's no vehicle exhaust system. That's a current operational requirement for the fire department because there's known carcinogens in the diesel exhaust that needs to be evacuated automatically. So every time a vehicle is started, that exhaust is evacuated from the building and from the apparatus bay as part of their normal operations. Also, as part of that is the function of decontamination and storage of the protective equipment and, believe it or not, protection of the protective equipment so that when the firefighters need their equipment, it's safe and it's operational for them. Again, a lot of research has shown that proper cleaning protects the firefighters in the long term against increased hazard of cancer and things like that nature. That all goes back to proper cleaning and storage of the PPE, the structural fire equipment. That area doesn't exist in a large portion in the building right now. They have the ability to do that if I remember correctly, but the proper storage, it should be within a contained room. That contained room is under negative pressure so that the off-gassing, because it's been proven again, sorry if I back up a little bit, once cleaned, the PPE, the structure, the gear still off-gasses for days after an event. That needs to be contained within a room and basically exhausted, so that way it doesn't leach throughout the rest of the building and increase that. So long answer short, as a fire station, it wouldn't be, it'd kind of be cost prohibitive to keep that and maintain that as current operations.
So are you saying that when the fire's out, the danger doesn't end?
That's a great way to say it. The fire's out, the danger does not end for the firefighters.
Did we answer that question there for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just wondering, just to be devil's advocate though, I mean, can any of those improvements be made in a way that is feasible and makes sense, or do you start opening the door? Like you said that the building's old and it doesn't comply with current standards, but is it not the same case as it is with like ADA compliance, that there's a dollar amount you have to get to before all of those, like if were we to do anything, we would trigger those new,
You would, so
Building.
part of an existing, and I think I understand the
Yeah.
question. So you're talking about the ADA trigger.
Yeah.
But part of any system upgrades, there are a series of steps. One will trigger the next, will trigger the next. One of those triggers is a structural upgrade. Okay. And forgive me if I'm drawing a blank on the exact order. There's sprinkler system upgrade, there's structural upgrade, and then there's ADA. Most often, and I assume it would probably be very similar to the case here, one upgrade would then trigger the next, which then trigger the third. And it's not going to take you long to get to that level of increase.
If I remember right, 30% of assessed value triggers complete handicap accessibility.
Typically, yeah.
And you say it has sprinklers or doesn't?
It does
Does not.
It
How's the
doesn't.
building?
I mean, I know one of the reasons,
Headquarters does?
Headquarters has sprinklers, yeah.
Was that not included in the
They're not in every section of the building.
So it's not fully
One
sprinkled?
More
of
the,
Not
the,
fully
the ad,
sprinkled.
it's not fully the admin area, correct?
The upstairs
The bunks.
bunk room is
The bunks,
sprinkled.
yeah.
The, most of the lower area is not, because at one point it was dispatch, and dispatch was not something you wanted to
So
have water
the
in.
maintenance bay, the apparatus bay does not.
No, I don't think it does.
Yeah, like where all the expensive equipment is.
Right,
I mean,
and one of the
lives are
things-
expensive too, don't get me wrong, but.
One of the reasons that we ended up tearing down the building next door was that in order to put sprinklers in it, we would have had to literally cut the roof off and raise it because there wasn't room, the headroom to put the sprinklers in.
That gets into the next, or not next, but another significant challenge is the bays are smaller than equipment is coming these days and challenging in that nature. So that does trigger you to buy specialty equipment, which tends to cost more for the fire trucks and things of that nature.
Actually, when we order a ladder truck, we have to, they're all custom built, but we have to have it especially custom built to make it shorter. Some of that's for the arches, but it also has to be a little bit narrower for the bays.
So a building that's 125 years old has outlived its usefulness. Is that the bottom line?
That's the bottom line of it, yes.
Okay. Police station.
So similarly to the police station, did the full assessment, walked with the chief, our engineers went through. A lot of very similar findings, older building, water staining in the tiles, which means the roof is leaking, which I know you guys just had a conversation related to the new roof. To be.
There are emergency repairs
To
to the
repair
roof
it.
that are needed. We
Right.
will be interviewing architects on May 24th, and hopefully that will be designed and out on the street, and sometime in early fall, we'll get your roof fixed, chief.
Get rid of the buckets?
So aged roof, as you just discussed, interior walls are cracking, settling is happening, efflorescence again, moisture within the walls, cracking, loose lintels are rusting. The front entry masonry steps are literally falling over, which is on top of the old, I want to say VFW, but it's not. Elks Club steps. So there's definitely a lot occurring in the front entry. The downspouts aren't connected, so again, all the storm water is just dispersing out and causing issues in the basement. Further creating issues. Oops. Doesn't have a central heating system, and it's all accomplished. All the heating is accomplished through electric. Whether they're surface, ceiling mounted, floor mounted, which is again. At the time it was done, the way they're using it now, it's very costly. Today's standards, it's less costly, but with the age of those systems, it's quite costly. The rooftop air handling units are well beyond its life expectancy. I did have some images last time to show that. Emergency lighting is missing. Fire alarm coverage is largely missing throughout the building. Yes, there's areas that are sprinklered, but there's areas that are not. And I mean that I know I went through that pretty quickly, but generally again, age of the building, it's beyond its life expectancy, and we'll get to the actual square footage is just they're busting at the seams.
And there's no place to put an addition next to it, correct?
There's not, but we have a couple images to show what could potentially occur on those.
And again,
properties.
this building is 1923?
It's 20s, I believe. I'm not remembering.
23, 24, I
Yeah.
believe, right around
Yeah,
there.
so it's basically 100 years old.
100 years old.
So it owes us nothing. Okay.
So from there, just to refresh from last meeting, which was early December, there was a number of sites that we had preliminarily reviewed with the previous mayor, the chiefs, went through about a dozen of them. There was a number of reasons why they did not work, whether it was this, I'm taking your thunder, sorry, Eric, but,
Go ahead.
the square footage of the site, acreage was too small,
Right.
access points, setbacks, just wasn't able to.
Are you still looking for the 100,000 square feet?
So we'll get to that, but yes, the
Okay.
building itself is grossing right around 100,000 square feet for both departments combined. So the footprint, depending on how many stories we go, the footprint could shift on the overall square footage. So of the 12 or so sites that we reviewed over the last fall into the winter, there was only the one site that was large enough. We understand that there was some Article 97 issues or items, but we did further look at that and just to say, hey, what if this were an option, how could this function? How could it work? Which I'll get to in a few moments. So from there, we further developed the programming elements, having interviews with the fire chief as well as the police chief. We determine the needs, determine the square footages, determine the growth of the anticipated growth over the next 25 to 50 years, not only on personnel, but also apparatus and equipment. So from all of that, the general summary was, so this is just as if just separate buildings, if they were built on separate properties. So generally, the police program is roughly a 64,000 square foot building with an auxiliary or an outbuilding of 6,000 square feet for vehicle storage, trailer storage, some maintenance storage or maintenance of those areas. So program roughly 70,000 square feet.
How does that compare to what they have now?
And you can ask me that. I think you're at like 15 to 20,000 square feet. I can get you that answer. I should know that. But
It's a significant delta.
yes,
Yes.
it's more than twice the size.
Do you have something you want to add, Chief?
Well, we're using two buildings now, so it would make sense that
Correct. The lower level of the
post office.
post
The old
office.
post office.
Right. And then similarly, we did that with the fire department for the headquarters. So just with the existing proposed program and the future growth, building square footage approximately 43,000 square feet with accessory bays, outbuildings, and mechanics outbuildings as well for maintenance and storage. Roughly 15,000 square feet. So total square footage of 58,500 square feet. So separating those two buildings, it's approximately
Pushing 130,000 square feet if we did two separate
two
buildings.
separate buildings, separate operations, keeping them on separate properties, whatever it may be. So it's quite a bit of building. So once we took the two programs, what we do is analyze both and where we can find efficiencies. So it really starts with, number one, mechanical systems, and then you have circulation, then you have stairwells, then you have elevators, and then you're sharing mechanical and electrical rooms, sharing a generator, you're sharing air handling equipment, all the infrastructure for IT. So all of that space, instead of dividing up between separate buildings, you're starting to combine. Yes, the spaces are a little bit, I don't want to say bigger, but you're able to condense and consolidate. Looking at training areas, so both departments were having training areas, whether simulation areas, defensive tactics for the police department, but also training and meeting rooms similarly for the fire department. So combining those spaces, taking the max quantity, I think for that instance, it was roughly a 70-person, quite similar to this size, 70-person meeting room. Dual is a community room, meeting rooms, conference rooms, EOC, Emergency Operating Center. So combining program elements into those, sharing dispatch, combining the consoles into one room rather than kind of keeping them separated. Granted, the most of the dispatch would be on the police side, but there is a dispatch element on the fire side. Combining or sharing wellness facilities, that element is for both needs for both departments. As well as those auxiliary spaces about the mechanics, auxiliary buildings and storage buildings, whether they're, an outbuilding, a metal building, or somewhere that goes somewhere else, or wherever we get to. So by consolidating and reducing that square footage and combining the efficiencies and shared spaces, given a building square footage of approximately 95,000 square foot, which is back to the 100,000 square foot building as we were originally, which was kind of I don't call it a guess, but based on what we've been doing in the last many years, we kind of knew where we were heading. And then trying to be able to consolidate even the accessory buildings, obviously it would need to have a separation, the two different operations, but trying to reduce those needs in as best as possible.
So that means we saved 20,000 square feet?
Plus or minus, yes.
And how many dollars per square foot do you guess these days?
That's where
anomaly ends right now, not ends, begins, is we're anywhere between 750 to 850
Per square foot.
per square foot. That's just construction cost.
$800 a square foot.
Yes.
Makes this building look like a bargain. We did 560 here. So 800 times 20,000, that's 16 million?
Correct.
So it's $16 million cheaper
To combine.
to build this, but we're also talking 80, 90 million to build it?
Yeah, when you're roughly 100,000 square feet on construction, and then there's the soft costs and the owner's costs and contingencies.
So that'll get headlines in the Sun Chronicle.
It already did,
Just now.
last time it came up.
So, sorry, any other questions or comments before I move on?
Yeah, move along.
So from there, we take the building footprints, look at specific, the site selections or previous site opportunities that we looked at previously. So what we wanted to do is at least show a diagrammatic of the the lot right across the street. And zooming in, just showing this is a similar project that we're doing in a neighboring community. It's a very similar square footage, very similar program, roughly 100,000 square feet, similar parking requirements, similar parking needs. But we just wanted to quickly to show, how large of a footprint is how large of a site it would take up. So considering what is already there, that parking lot that was constructed for this property during construction, we're in the same vicinity of what's already there, of disturbance of that property, of that current property. So we were providing public parking, private parking, or secured parking for both departments, combining the two. I know it's not currently showing out buildings and whatnot, but just really wanted to give the group here a quick overview of, because that's very tangible. You're able to see it currently and then see how big it really, how much space it really takes up.
And so if that site was not on the table,
So that site was not on the table.
is there an alternative?
Yep. So the next topic of conversation was the city hall, the existing police department property, city hall, post office property site. So first, this is the kind of going to peel it away here, but this is the most expansive development of that property, which would show the combined facility. I don't know if this mouse I don't have. I guess you can see that. So police department in the center, and that's roughly a 3-story structure, 20,000 square foot footprint. Just over 20,000 square foot. The 5-bay apparatus bay, the firehouse, which is a 2-story firehouse, 5,500 square foot per plate. Utilizing the existing RMV building as, fire administration, some meeting rooms, so renovating that space to capture or recapture some of the square footage that's in there. A parking structure to capture, this is to kind of maximize as much parking as would be feasible in that location. So it'd be a 3-story triple-decker parking structure with roughly 250 parking spots, which would be secured parking for both departments. So that, not a apparatus, but, stored vehicles, trailers, light trailers. Impound, all that becomes a secured structure. And then with this, depending on, granted, this is going to displace a lot of infrastructure, a lot of, city admin, and then if either the city hall remains or becomes some sort of public community space, public parking, plaza, garden space, for this area. So this total footprint is roughly 65,000 square foot, utilizing all these different elements. As you can see, it fills up that entire property pretty quickly.
John, could you just orient us, is the old post office the orange?
Yes, correct.
So it's the old post office building there, the existing police station is half under this. So there are some operational challenges potentially during construction, because that building gets built gets built right on top of the PD, so you displace the police department while construction's happening. Yeah, so
So
you'd
they'd have to be
look
homeless for a while.
at temporary facility for them, correct?
And is the green the parking structure?
Sorry, the green is the plaza, community plaza garden area.
Current city hall.
You can speak to
Kind of a
that.
park space on the corner there. Or the town hall stays where it is.
And then the park.
And the green is where City Hall is now?
Currently, yes, yeah.
One thing I want to say is the lots within this yellow line, which is the property line, all those lots are owned by Attleboro at the moment. As far as we can tell from GIS, what's on the town website. So these are all town-owned, currently owned by the town, and presumably available for development versus taking property.
And so if you were to do this, would it change the cost analysis from building at Highland as an example?
I think short answer, yes, because there's going to be temporary facilities for an operation of a police department. In this scenario, yes.
And there's a parking garage.
And there's a parking element, an elevated parking deck, which increases the cost.
And we'd also have to find a place to put City Hall.
That's correct.
You have demolition, you have renovation of the post office building.
We would demolish the post office building?
No, sorry, excuse me. You
Just
have
renovate it.
Renovated.
the inside, because understanding it's a historically significant building, we want to maintain that. But you have demolition of the existing PD. If City Hall is chose to be knocked down, you have demolition of that, site development, as opposed to on the other location, it's purely site development cost.
So is the short answer, we know what we need, but we have no place to put it?
Fair,
It's
yes.
fair, yeah, response.
Unless we acquire property somewhere, right? And then, of course, the other.
Jack, why can't it be built on Highland Park?
I'll let the mayor address that.
I haven't expressed any, I've neither said they can or can't. I'm just here to learn and listen.
Yeah.
But I will say this, from a city planning perspective, I'm wondering to put a joint safety complex in the middle of a residential neighborhood. City planning perspective, that doesn't strike anybody as,
It's not the best location.
yeah. I mean, it's a beautiful spot, but it's dropped in the middle of a residential neighborhood. To me, a downtown location makes a lot more sense for several reasons, but Kyle, I have no opinion on it. I'm here to learn. I'm wondering, was the reserve training center on the list? I know the feds still own it, but was that?
We were told that it would be 4 or 5 years before we would even know if we could acquire it, much less use it.
Well,
And
this
that was information that came to us at the last meeting,
Yeah.
and I'm trying to think, did that come through Jim Hawkins?
Yeah.
Or, no, it came through Auchincloss's office,
Auchincloss,
I
right.
believe, because that's
Yep.
feds. So one of the things about this site is we know that the response times work, because it's right where it's a couple blocks away from the current firehouse. As I understand it, Kyle, response time isn't an issue because your cruisers are out on the road anyway. But if it was over at Highland, would that change the response times?
It would, we'd have to look at it a little bit further. I don't believe it would greatly negatively affect that response. To the question of it being within a residential neighborhood, yeah, a little less than ideal. However, you do get the offset where your primary first responders are directly close to.
Yeah, that I appreciate. I have a
So
kid in that school,
there
so
is a
that
balance in that.
yeah, I fully appreciate that.
I would say that any location that's different than where we're at now would require NFPA response analysis
Yes, sure,
to,
yes.
because everything's doable, but sometimes moving a station even just a mile or two, it can have a significant impact on our ISO rating, how we dispatch the apparatus, and sometimes it requires building an additional fire station. Like, we used to have 5 fire stations in Attleboro. So with the old, which is now the Council on Aging, that station was manned, and headquarters was too, for quite a while. We used to run a separate fire engine and ladder truck out of that place, so even when that got taken out of service, it does affect.
Yeah.
Well, we have the perfect answer. We're going to build a new council on aging, so therefore you can take that back over.
You can have it.
There you go.
We do have that function, that analysis as part of it, of our service that we were signed on for, because knowing full well that shifting apparatus, shifting a fire station headquarters, that there is, sometimes it's just very simply shifting the way that it's deployed, if you would, where the apparatus is located. So we knew that, we had that as part of our proposal, but we're just, right at this point in time, trying to find the site that's going to fit the overall building. So as soon as we have something of that nature, we can absolutely employ that to confirm what's that going to do to not only the response, but also the ISO.
If we did this option here, is rebuilding City Hall something that has to be done, or is it, do we still have appropriate amount of parking, room for the building?
That's one of the, not that it's a joking matter at all, but that's one of the reasons why we show it as a green area, because the responsive fire apparatus is taking away all that parking. There is, at baseline level, limited to no parking available in that scenario. So that's why we showed it as converting it to a plaza of some kind, because ultimately you're cramming 5 pounds of 50 pounds of sugar in a 2-pound bag in this scenario. There's a lot going on, and when you start talking about fire apparatus responding, the potential for police having to respond from this location as well, you get a lot of activity happening there. And it's their proximity to adjacent intersections, some narrower streets, if I recall correctly from being on them, their apparatus turning in and out and returning could be a challenge in that
Are
location.
the parking garage spaces, is that for the employees, or is that just public use, or both?
Primarily employee and staff.
How many floors is your parking garage space?
So currently, it's 3 stories, to maximize out 250 spots, that does exceed what is necessary.
Yeah.
So depending on how it's laid out and how much is, there could be
Yeah.
some public element to it, but then there's a security issue.
Well, I wasn't thinking public element. I was thinking if we leave City Hall there and you add more parking to that garage, it could all work. I'm also wondering, Kyle, that bump out for GATRA, right? That's going to go away. Do they still have the GATRA? Isn't that going to go away at some
It's
point?
more or less a dead
That
bus
space
stop.
anyway?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so.
So I don't know if that would be parking over there or whatever, but that little area at the top, gentlemen, should be in play at some point, where it used to be an existing bus stop, but I think that should be going away sooner than later. But this,
We're planning on taking it under this. What you can't see here is that there's the apparatus bay in the middle.
oh, okay, they
There's
got to
an
pull out
ap-
there?
It's a drive-through apparatus bay, so there's
So
an
they would
apron on
pull
both
out.
sides of
Good,
that. that you're
perfect,
not
all
seeing.
right. I'm intrigued by the possibility of adding a layer of parking and keeping City Hall. That would be a nice little
And,
space right there.
right, because in City Hall.
It's municipal
is-
complex now.
City Hall is inadequate in size. I mean,
Yeah, but it is, but I'm not worried, that's not,
no, I was just thinking that if you could put another story on City Hall,
that too, yeah, that
you
too.
know.
Frankly,
and-
yeah.
And put another story or 2 on the parking garage, do we have something that we could really start working with here?
I like the idea of a municipal complex.
We would
In that
approve
area.
this park.
Within the structure.
In the parking structure too.
So you're gonna put public parking with
Well,
the cruises?
we're not actually suggesting that, but depending on how it's configured, if there's more and more of it occurring. So the 250 spots was strictly for cruisers, personal vehicles. I mean, it's
Change of
maximized.
shifts.
Changing shifts. It wasn't implied for public, but if the momentum's moving towards a complex, the challenges of that becomes security of the garage, because having public vehicles
I
next
fail to
to,
appreciate that point.
coming next to,
Secured area versus a public
Got
area.
it, got it.
and then exiting, sorry.
The white area up there, is that Jim's office?
Yep,
who owns the Industrial Museum and the ARA and cable building? Do we know?
You know, Jackie?
WARA. Ask Jim.
I don't recall who, but it's
The Industrial Museum.
privately owned.
The Industrial Museum.
The Industrial Museum owns it
Man,
all.
if we could get that space too.
So if we needed a little bit more space, could we maybe approach the Industrial Museum about adding that into the complex and maybe, finding another space for them in an
Take the
appropriate
COA
location?
over when COA moves out.
Oh, yeah, that actually,
That would be perfect. It's good size.
it is a good size, a good idea,
Give them
Terry.
the old council on aging.
That's
That's what Terry
I'm
said.
saying, yes.
You guys are thinking alike, that's a good idea.
For the TV station too, though.
If we were to
Yeah, they should.
acquire that white building up there, would that significantly help us?
It would.
It would, yeah.
We had initially looked at that, and then we realized, we thought it was town-owned or city-owned. And we initially looked at that, and we realized it was privately owned, and we backed off it. So, yeah, it would help us. It would make that garage and the surface parking work a lot better. You'd be able to secure an area and leave an area public. So, yeah, it would make that process easier.
Even.
It also would make not displacing the PD, and putting them into a temporary
Yeah.
facility a little
Yeah.
bit
We
easier.
could build around
You could build around.
We could build around
Yeah.
it.
and then knock their station down as the last thing.
I have to say municipal complex, in my opinion, is a lot more palatable, makes a lot more sense for many reasons, city planning being one. And we could solve several problems with one fell swoop, one being parking being tight for City Hall as well. So,
Yeah,
I think it's worth further consideration.
I think this is really has a lot going for it, especially if we can negotiate with the Industrial Museum. And, I don't know how wedded they are to staying exactly where they are. I don't know that we want to kick the AACS out, but I'm sure there are other places they can go too.
And there's an auto parts store in there, too. I'm not sure if it's still open, but
Oh, that's right, there's that little parking
There's,
store on
there
there.
is another little building in
Yep.
there.
Which one's the auto parts store?
I think this is the.
where those
Where the white vehicles are.
white cars are parked?
There's a bay door here, it's
Yeah.
an A-plus auto or something of that nature.
Okay.
There's a number of buildings along there.
But I mean, looking at it quickly, like you can see how that's the lot right there. So you'd have, a large,
Yeah.
very easily developable
So,
property.
and one thing that we were intrigued by was that you've got that large lot with the large building. You've got a strip lot right where his cursor is right now that goes up. That's privately owned also. But you go to the next lot over, which is fairly big, that's city-owned also.
There you go, there you go. So we have buildings in play, I mean, we've got the Larson Center that's gonna be in play.
Yep.
At some point, 95 Pine Street is gonna be in play. So in terms of giving opportunities to the existing entities,
Is that the Richardsons?
yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay, yeah.
So, and Santander, that the bank there, is in
Yeah,
play.
it's one of the interesting things that we noticed is that the Santander Bank building, they did not renew their lease. So one of the things we wondered was if we could find a way to reuse that building, not necessarily for your project, but for other things that might need to move.
Right.
Auto parts store.
Within the map here,
No,
or
it's down
further
the
away?
block.
Yeah, or the industrial, I mean, the industrial museum too, it would be a great spot for the industrial, because it's got the windows in the front.
Yep, it's very centered.
So
We have
this-
the old high school too,
Well,
maybe. I'm not sure that would be accessible.
that needs a lot of work, my friend, you gotta get over there, that's a
Yeah.
I got a
whole.
question here. Have you looked at the old high school, the old high school on County Street?
Yes.
Not accessible though.
I mean, you could dig that down in front and do a drive on the bay, and dump the fire apparatus right onto County Street. It's only less than a mile away.
We'd have to back in off of County Street.
That would be one of the downfalls, but you guys are backing in
That's a
now.
disaster for traffic, because it's 25 times a day.
When we looked at it, even just that lot alone isn't big enough to fit the new building. we'd need to acquire lots next to it to have the space for parking and everything else we need to develop a new police public safety complex. We did look at that.
But this type of option, being so spread out, are there any concerns that chiefs might have? Just, it looks like fire admin's up here, but you park your car way over there, so.
Yeah, I don't like this. I would not advocate for it, even publicly, I wouldn't. I would say the police union would support that position also.
Based on what, Kyle? What, I don't understand.
So, the city has a historical penchant for screwing things up, and I think this is the way we're going again. We're trying to put 1,000 pounds into a little shoebox where there's better options.
Even if we were to get that space, the white building in the upper left corner, Kyle?
If we could get that other space and actually sit down and have an intelligent conversation with the chief and I about how the police department and the fire department operate and looking for the future, but being presented with this, the functionality of it, we have no idea, whatever, but what's being presented right here probably most will not likely work at all, in my opinion.
But if we had other property that was adjacent.
If it was a larger,
Excuse me?
if it was larger, as you said, bring that other parcel into play, yeah, then we could reconfigure and look at it. However, what the city-owned land is and the possibility of acquiring that land is not 100% correct.
Well, the city can take something by eminent domain. We don't like to, but the city can certainly do that.
If that's the case, we should take the whole block.
And if we have, in essence, pretty much the whole block, or at least as much as we can see here, and if we can build something next to City Hall that might add some office space to City Hall, between City Hall and the old post office, maybe. I mean, I see a lot of possibilities here.
Yeah, by definitely acquiring more property, making it a non-awkward shape, so that's, I agree with you 100%, Chief. You're forcing it to work to make it, the apparatus, you have to have the pull through, there's things that are being forced.
The last thing we want to do is 5 years after it opens, be kicking ourselves in the rear end because we just spent $90 million and it's inadequate and it's not designed right and we're stuck with it for another 100 years. That is a given, right?
Yeah, 100%. And to Chief's point, there's no floor plan. We haven't laid anything out. We're just strictly talking square footage, footprints, quantities to see how much needs to be manipulated or acquired to make it even more feasible. And then, in their defense, we haven't even discussed operationally. We understand how they function, mostly function, but, how they're interacting with each other and, they're crisscrossing departments. It's challenging.
So if you had the space you needed, or let me put it a different way, if we gave you as your mission now to say, forget about who owns what, design a municipal complex that is what it should be, and then let's see what the implications are, is that the way we should be going?
Oh, you're asking me? You mean in this particular?
I'm asking everybody.
Oh, that's an interesting question, right? Do you design what you want and then find a place for it, or you find a place and then design what you need for that space? I don't know. I would defer to the professionals. I appreciate Kyle and Scott's, obviously the chief's opinion matter, but I would like to say, could we have a plan where we acquire, a magical plan where we acquire that space in white, you talk to the chiefs about what they want so we could all see it in a way that works and makes sense. Because they're going to live in it, and it's got to work for them for sure. But I will say, gentlemen, I like the idea of a municipal complex. I think it's good for the city for several reasons. But obviously, I know you got to work in there every day, and you got to get your jobs done. So are you open to seeing this space redesigned using that corner spot?
With acquiring that other land without speaking for the chief. But
It's worth looking at anyway, right? We can play.
Years ago, there was a talk about the old Richardson School.
Yeah.
and the Armory, I mean, the
Oh, the rec center.
rec center.
Yep.
I know it's controversial because years ago, we had the opportunity to buy the property that's right next door to my station. Actually, many years ago, it was, Kevin Dumas was still the mayor. And there was actually, just because the city can't do things, municipalities can't do things quick.
Yeah.
So it ended up getting sold before the city could do anything. But it's right next door. That's the only piece of private property that basically makes that whole block.
That's another interesting thought. Take the rec center, take Richardson.
Because it's almost all city property. You know, the problem with that is the fire station obviously we'd still have to work out of it. But it would solve his problem, his station would still be open. You know, it'd be a big giant block. I don't know if that square footage is the same as that, but I feel like it probably is.
Probably pretty close.
the
We could look at those properties. We'll just have to confirm those
Chief, you're
addresses.
suggesting that if we knock down the Richardson School and the rec center and put a building there, you're saying let's look at that as another option?
Yeah, well, especially if this space turns out not to be an option, I think it's worth.
And the challenge there becomes still finding a spot for the rec center.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I didn't
Which
say-
I also
didn't say
like
there were no
downtown.
problems.
Which I also like downtown because that makes sense
Right.
to me from a city planning perspective as well. But I'm with you, chief. I don't have a problem looking at stuff, you know? I mean,
For $90 million, we have to
Yeah,
leave
you wanna
no
get it
stone
right.
unturned.
Right.
you want to get it right. You know,
We went into the existing building was a quick fix from Wall Street.
Yes.
And the day they moved in there, they already outgrew the building. But it was better than what they had. But still, it wasn't even adequate. They were just happy to get out of where they were.
It was a compromise to get rid of a really bad situation.
Right, to go into a bad situation.
Yeah, and so we understand that as a community, we're going to need to do something significant, but as you said, and as we've all said, we got to do it right. We can't ask the taxpayers to foot a bill for something that isn't going to be effective and efficient and fulfill our needs for the next 100 years,
Yeah.
because it's not likely we're going to get another public safety building.
It's going to be a 100 years building.
And to that end, you know, it's hard to see the future, right? But technology is changing rapidly. Do you know the impacts on technology, on the size and the equipment? And maybe, chiefs, maybe you, I don't mean to be, but things are changing really fast. And I'm inclined to think that these changes are going to result in less space needed. You think they're going, yeah, okay, so that's one, have you factored that into your calculations?
We do. We sat with both departments.
Yeah.
Now, we have a fire station expert who sits on a national board and speaks nationally. I sit on the International Association of Chief of Police Board to get a thumb of what's being talked about technology-wise. And what's actually coming more down the pike is more community operations being not absorbed into the police department, but being involved with the police department. And we're seeing some of those functionalities being incorporated into
Oh, good to know.
that.
All right.
So it's some outreach programs as well as it's a dual, kind of a dual role. They have a dual hat, if you would. They support the community, but they also support the officers, or the firefighters in those events as well. So we're actually seeing more spaces that we weren't even 10 years ago seeing being incorporated into stations. And as far as technology, we look just growing leaps and bounds.
Yeah.
You know, the use of drone programs. Latest conversation was like real-time crime centers or cities of the future, where the department's able to see and then even feed information into officers that are responding from traffic cameras, body-worn cameras, things of that nature that are out in the community to help try and minimize, you know, incidences on their way to a response call. So there's, if anything, it is expanding. We try and anticipate it. We had a lengthy conversation through the programming process. At least, 2 sessions of,
Maybe 3.
yeah.
All right, good to know. Wow.
4 hours.
Comprehensive.
All right, no, I'm glad you considered that, good to know.
Chief was tired of us.
Yeah.
I wasn't tired. It was interesting. Because you really have to look 50, 100 years into the future. I mean, it's really interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was, you know, it's a lot of trying to pull things in, and I'll even tell you, there's the stations that I did 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that they're still holding up well.
Yeah.
But they're like, yeah, we never anticipated things like body cameras being a reality in this area, and now they having to adapt, and the buildings are adaptable, is the best thing I can say.
So, thank you for that.
So how much time do you need to dream and run your dreams by the chiefs and come back to us with some more ideas?
Some more layout like of this level to test fit, that's pretty simple, and we could do that within a few weeks, I think, and just scheduling some time to sit down with both of them. I would ask the question is, where you're talking, Mayor, about a complex, would you want to consider or be open to not just leaving the city hall there, but maybe it's a new and combined into the building? And I don't want to speak out of turn about it, anything, but if it's a complex.
Yeah.
know,
Let's see it both. I'd be curious about the cost impact of doing that. So let's leave it as it is in one version, and the other version, let's dream
Okay.
and see what the price is.
And so why don't you do what you need to do? We're kind of booked up for the month of May at this point, but our regular meeting is June 3rd, but I'm wondering whether June 3rd, I think that's,
June 7th,
excuse me?
June 7th.
June 7th. And so it's possible we could do it that night, but I'm just thinking if we want to devote a night again to just this rather than all the other things we have to do, I'm wondering if maybe we target June 14th as a date to, and that gives you at least 6 weeks then to really vet this out, and because we certainly want the chief's input, and you may go through 3 or 4 iterations before we find one that everybody's happy with. So should we target June 14th? Just put it in the schedule. Molly's got it.
Yep.
And if I prefer to meet here because the graphics are better, is that okay?
Fine with me? Good?
Yep.
That
Yeah.
big board is wonderful in City Hall, but
Yeah.
it's a little old and a little indistinct, and this a little easier for
Yep.
people to see. So why don't we say thank you for what you've done?
Thank you, gentlemen.
And do some dreaming and some figuring, and why don't we see you again back in this room on June 14th, assuming Molly can reserve it.
Perfect.
And,
One thing to consider in future meetings is the implications of letting the genie out of the bottle as far as taking property. If there's an executive session process you could go into, you might want to consider that.
Yeah, and we are disinclined to do that. That's not,
Yeah.
yeah. Agreed.
But, this is broadcast live, so
Genie's out of the bottle.
Genie's out of the bottle.
That's okay, Jim's sitting back there anyway, so.
But, So, in any event, 6:23, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.